Scotland at its best, we go out with a young lad for his first stag on the beautiful Arden Peninsula. Scotland at its worst. It's no exaggeration that this time next week, hundreds of businesses in Scotland will be considering bankruptcy thanks to Nicola Sturgeon. We give you the story.
What a bloody day.
Scotland remains gorgeous. I'm on the edge of the Monotliat Hills and the first roars of the Red Rut are underway. Welcome to Fieldsports Britain.
The thing about a red deer hind, particularly on the west coast of Scotland, is in that old lady down there. There's years and years of practical learning.
To me, I think the thing about deer is that they're not just iconic, there's something about being in their company that's special. And it's almost a spiritual thing being with them. And I've had a fascination with deer, red deer, but all species of deer all my life. And I think they're ingrained in me, but they're also ingrained in our culture and our heritage. And the Highlands would be a sad place without them. We've had a wet morning that we saw, a lot of heavy rain, deer making their way into woodland cover. As we've come up the road, you've seen a number of stags going off the road and disappearing into the trees. What will happen now as the evening goes on, Louis, is they'll start to make their way out of the forest into the open. And it's typically the way red deer would behave. And if you look in Austria and parts of Germany where there's mountain country and forest, very often what will happen is the deer use the forest in heavy weather, be it wind, rain, snow, these things. Because one of the great things that makes them good to eat is that they're lean meat. They don't carry a lot of fat. But it also means that they can suffer from exposure quite quickly. And how deer have evolved is they've evolved to take full advantage of shelter and cover. Deer are a symptom of what an awful lot of our society has become disconnected from. We evolved from the very land that we're sitting on, and we are part of this. And in the modern world, we seem to have the sensation that we're almost looking through a window onto the rest of the planet. And it's an odd position for us to take, because the changes that are going on in habitat and climate and loss of species frequently come right back to our doorstep. They come back to us as a species and how we've used our resources. So my I would say, not so much defence, but my position is that we are the main influencers of the landscape. And the fact that we use deer and hunt them is only part of the fact it's how we live here now. We no longer barter in a piece of meat for a bag of potatoes. We actually barter in what things are worth. And unfortunately, in the world we live in, the world that we've created, if things don't have a value to a community, they don't have a role. And simply put here, if Highland red deer, in the sort of numbers they exist, didn't generate an income, I would suggest they wouldn't be here. And that's my core defence, is that deer are a contributor to this community and to how we sustain ourselves.
Deer hind that you're looking at, this is them just standing about the trees, okay? But what we'll do is we'll keep to the edge here and have a look what's happening.
What they're trying to do here is turn the deer that you actually shoot into an asset. It's not some vermin that needs to be shot. It is an asset to the estate, to the community that lives around it. And for that reason, I brought my nephew here for his first stag, because we can pretty much show it's not just any old stag that we're going to shoot, it's going to be the right one. And I would like for him to take this mindset away for when it comes to do his own deer management.
And you can see on the right hand boy, he has got 3 on each top, but the head is quite short. And the boy on the left hand side, he's an 8 with forks. But for the kind of stags that we normally have in here, he's not the best for his age.
One of the great opportunities we've got here is that frequently in a year we take people out to hunt their first red deer. And I take a huge degree of responsibility in this, because you realise that you're setting somebody off on a course. And I think where it takes them is from observing to actually being part of. And there's immense responsibility in it. Not only in the guide who takes somebody on their first stag and makes sure that they've been properly schooled in how to use a firearm, but more importantly, why they're using the firearm. Why are they killing that deer? What do they hope to gain from it personally? And what difference does it make to the economy and the wildlife in the area they're hunting? And I think that's an important role for a guide. And I think the modern role of the hunter isn't to shy away from the fact that he's hunting because he enjoys the experience, because it's been ingrained in him in his genes for thousands of years. But what he hopes to do in the future by being part of the economy, the spirit and the drive that makes hunters what they are. And much of the conservation successes, the fact we have species to fight about now, is because hunters, over thousands of years, protected and managed that resource, be it the buffalo of the American plains or the red deer of the Scottish Highlands. And it shouldn't be forgotten that hunters brought us all the way to where we are now, with all our successes and some of our failures. Good, wealthy, now. See that fold at the back of the shoulder? Put it in there. Yeah. Absolutely excellent.
I know how these animals are treated, and I know what's happened to them and what processes they've been through before they reach the table. Whereas stuff you buy in a supermarket, you don't know that. You realise that you have taken a life, but also you realise that it was the right thing to do, and that it's not going to be wasted. You know it's going to be eaten, and it has been treated well, and it was necessary. Also, you feel kind of proud when it comes onto the table and you know that you shot it.
The responsibility on the hunter now is that every day he puts his binoculars on or straps his rifle on his back, he's become an ambassador for what he does. And I think an ability to describe what you're doing and to be ethical and humane, it's important that all of us keep that at the front of our mind.
What a glorious story, and thank you to top hunting YouTuber Byron Pace for making it for us. Later in the show we're going to tell you why this may be the last season you see a story like that. First up, it's Fieldsports Channel News.
This is Fieldsports Channel News. The National Gamekeepers organisation has announced the winners of its national awards. 6 gamekeepers were recognised with a long service award made by Liam Bell. They had to have 40 or more years of employment, and they included Ian Gartfoot of Westwick Estate in Norfolk, Steve Hammeroff of the Bulland Shoot in Somerset, Kevin Hubbard of the Lower Lodge Shoot in West Sussex, Godfrey Pittman of Druids Lodge Estate in Wiltshire, Alec Throop of Bolton Abbey in North Yorkshire, and Michael Warren of Sandling Park in Kent. The NGO also gave the Frank Jenkins Memorial Trophy, sponsored by Musto, to the best full or part-time gamekeeping student or apprentice of the academic year. This year it went to Jack DePlege from North Yorkshire. More bad news for Scottish landowners. The Scottish Government is setting out its vision for land reform this week. The Scottish Land Commission Conference in Dunfermline on Thursday the 28th of September 2017 will showcase Nicola Sturgeon's plans to take estates away from landowners between now and 2022. Guest speakers include SNP land reform enthusiast Rosanna Cunningham. Visit landcommission.gov.scot. The largest fish and wildlife exhibition opened at the weekend. 9 years in the making, the Wonders of Wildlife National Museum and Aquarium in Montana, USA, opened just ahead of America's National Hunting and Fishing Day on the 23rd of September. It was created by Bass Pro Shops founder Johnny Morris, who envisioned the not-for-profit project to show how hunting and shooting contributes to the conservation movement. The opening was attended by former Presidents George W. Bush and Jimmy Carter, as well as US Secretary of Interior Ryan Zinke. Visit wondersofwildlife.org. 2 dogs have been shot, mistaken for wild animals. An American hunter in New Jersey and a Canadian in British Columbia saw the animals and killed them. The American thought the Alaskan Shepherd was a coyote, and the Canadian thought a crossbred Siberian Husky and Alaskan Malamute was a wolf. The owner of the dog has launched a GoFundMe page in its memory, which has already raised 10,000 Canadian dollars. Hunting is back in Botswana. Following a ban in 2014, it is strictly regulated, but safari operators are taking leases on land in the southern African country. Wild West Safaris recently leased land at this game reserve on the Kalahari grassland. And finally, an American hunter had a scare when a bull moose put his nose inside his hide. Philip Rumpf from Utah was in a canyon when he spotted the moose. The moose spotted his blind and came up for a sniff. Rumpf says that all he could think of was, "Don't move, don't move." After its sniff, the moose moved on. You are now up to date with Fieldsports Channel News. Stalking the stories, fishing for facts.
Thank you, David. Now, it's a huge week for Scottish sport. Nicola Sturgeon is ramping up her attack on sporting estates. She's making announcements about land reform, she's talking about shoot licensing, and she's sending out 16,000 bills to sporting agents and estates.
In 1995, John Major's Tory government in Westminster abolished sporting rates. The cost of collecting it outweighed the amount it produced. In 2017, Nicola Sturgeon's SNP government in Edinburgh is bringing it back. It's going to cost you between 38p and £1 per acre per year to hold sporting rights in Scotland.
But it was a political position that was taken by the current government to reinstate the sporting rates. And the concept behind it is the perception that private individuals own large tracts of the Scottish Highlands. And to some, they believe that it's immoral, that socially it somehow creates an imbalance. But the truth of the matter is that when you look at a lot of the landscape that you look at behind you here, what do you do with it? And really, this has focused a lot of debate in the UK in the last 10, 12 years. We've got glitzy terms now like biodiversity. To people that have managed land all their life, the abundance of life has always been something they looked for. So we didn't need to put a term on it to suddenly refocus our thinking. For people that harvest game resources, the health of the habitat's everything. If your landscape isn't healthy, your deer aren't going to be healthy.
The tax applies to almost all of Scotland's 20 million acres. Neil will be hard hit because of the sporting rights his company leases on the west coast, and leaseholders have to pay these rates if that's what the lease says. Alvey is a sporting estate in the Central Highlands. The stag stalking at Alvey is available for about 7 weeks a year. You pay around £2,000 a week to rent a cottage and stalk, so that's an income of £14,000 a year if every week is let. I put it to the Laird, Jamie Williamson, that his 13,000 acres may attract a tax of almost his entire stag stalking income.
That could be fairly devastating. Obviously, we're on a fairly marginal land. A lot of the estates are now owned by people who are making money elsewhere. We're here trying to make our living from the land, and we very much depend on the income from the land to survive here.
I'm gravely concerned that the level of rates that are being suggested are going to have a massive negative impact on our ability to manage our natural resources wisely. And I can't see it as a righting of a wrong, because surely we're mature enough now in this country to say it's how we manage our land and how we manage the resources on it, be it salmon in cages off the coast, or deer on a mountainside, or trees in a forest.
Another estate in the spotlight is North Ascent in Sutherland. It's a land reform buyout by the Ascent Crofters Trust of 21,300 acres in 1993. They now let the stalking on the land, though, are under threat of a Scottish Government Section 8 kill order on their deer for not shooting enough of them. They face a sporting rates valuation of more than £40,000 and a possible bill for more than £20,000. Last season they made £9,000 shooting 62 stags. They'll have to shoot more than twice as many this year if they're just to afford the bill. Nicola is cracking down on the land reform beneficiaries she once promised to protect.
I think at the moment that we have a government that's got itself in a confused position, and we can see that recently with what went on in Ascent, that we had one element of government actually fiercely attacking the crofting community in Ascent for not delivering on their environmental objectives. But a little bit of raking under the surface, and it became quite clear that what had been presented to ministers and to the public was blatantly inaccurate. And we had Scottish Natural Heritage challenging the crofters, and at the same time the Forestry Commission paying out the grant because they delivered the regeneration. So there appears to be an agenda without a plan.
Jamie believes that the sporting rates controversy will have several unintended consequences. One is to hit Scottish landowners who are trying to run their land as a business in what is already a marginal area.
From our point of view, it's our livelihood, and if it makes a loss and we can't make a profit, then eventually we have to sell up.
One of Jamie's visiting stalkers is Lionel Neuville, an old friend of Fieldsports Channel who works for gunmaker Browning in Belgium. He is out after a Scottish stag with Alvie's stalkers Graham and Ian and is loving every minute of it.
We had a funny wind, but we saw a lot of animals after a couple of minutes. So in the landscape it was just amazing to see that. It took quite a while to approach them because it's never easy in the island. Sometimes the people think because we can see them miles away it's easier, but in fact they can see us as well. So you need to really think about the strategy to be close enough to succeed.
Jamie has 1,000 beds he can offer in the caravan park he runs on the estate, and only 30 available to stalkers and grouse shooters.
What actually happens is we worked out, again in the 1990s, in those days, let's say we're making £10 per visitor night with a camper in the caravan park, whereas for a deer stalker or a grouse shooter we're making about £500 per visitor day. So that gives you the context. Now that's what the estate's getting in, but obviously what we find is the person coming, particularly the German coming deer stalking or the Frenchman coming grouse shooting, he will also be stopping at the House of Brewer and spending a certain amount of money. He's coming up with his Range Rover or whatever it is. He will be spending more going into the local restaurants than the camper who's come. I think we're going to hit the same thing as what happened in Tayside, where they ended up with a lot of rafters coming down, and what happened is people didn't come back fishing. It didn't hit so much the estates because they all are doing farming, forestry, what have you. It actually hit a lot of the hotels and B&Bs and stuff like that. Now, we're quite happy. I actually, in total on the estate, make more out of the camping and the chalets and the caravans than I actually do out of the house. But the mix is good. It's exactly the same as sheep prices could be up and cattle prices down. I have exactly the same thing with between people in the house and people in the caravan park.
Back on the hill, and a combination of wind and ramblers is making the life of a stalker needlessly hard.
What a bloody day.
Eventually, Graham finds what he's been looking for and takes Lionel in a wide circle downwind of it.
Okay, the next strategy is to climb that hill and to go into the wood, to try to turn around, to compete against the wind. It's going to be the worst enemy for us today.
The strategy works, and Graham calls up Ian in the Argo to collect the carcass. Lionel returns a happy stalker.
We had to crawl a little bit to be on the top of the hill, and we spot them. They were a little bit too far, so around 250 meters. So we wait a little bit, and we decided to have a try around 180 meters. It was a good shot.
With walkers allowed to wander across all open land in the Highlands, and with some landowners wiping out deer that would normally rove across several estates in their areas, Highland deer stalking is altering to cope. Jamie recognises that Scotland's rural community is changing too.
Some of the local community is beginning to split away from the traditional thing of where the local community was there to support the rural economy. And if we collapse deer stalking, grouse shooting, it will impact on the community. But because tourism has gone elsewhere, we've got zip wire, we've got quad biking, we've got horse riding, we've got skiing, we've got gliding, we've got all these things. It's not probably going to be the impact of somewhere on the west coast where, let us say, really the main tourist attraction is grouse shooting, deer stalking.
Nicola Sturgeon uses the word Balmorality to describe rich industrialists and aristocrats owning land in Scotland. With her politics of unending grievance, she muddles sporting estate ownership with injustices from the Highland clearances to the Clydeside dockers' strikes.
This all came about because the British Empire, when it was at its peak, had incredibly successful industrialists. We could spend all day talking about what they did across the planet and the level of impact we had both on mankind and resources. But there was no doubt they had incredible wealth. And this passion to come to the Highlands and stalk deer with Celtic people that had always stalked deer. This wasn't a new thing. But the idea of actually taking part of this was a new thing. And it led to a massive investment. We're standing here in the Arden Peninsula. When Charles Rudd, who established De Beers, bought the estate, he was advised by people not to because of the level of poverty and want here. And yet, over his period of ownership and subsequent owners, the investment in the community has been enormous. But when I first came to this area, to this estate, it employed 4 people. Now it employs over 50. The Highland Sporting Estate, when this whole thing came about, was the super yacht of its day. This was a demonstration of what you could afford to lose, not what you were trying to make. And the balancing act's going to be how much pressure can we put on people before we break this goodwill of them spending their own personal wealth and managing our landscape, which is for a national benefit.
Shooting and stalking is a business that's doing well. It brings £200 million a year to the Scottish economy. It creates a beautiful and sustainable landscape. While she remains in power, Nicola has a short-term political goal: to bust the fat cat lairds. She has a long-term vision of a Scotland covered in Caledonian pine forest and wind farms all managed by contented crofters. What she can't see is what she is really creating: forestry where no animal may live in case it eats her trees, wind farms which are no-fly zones for eagles and hen harriers, shrinking investment in rural communities, and management taking place by government officials at night in helicopters with guns.
If we look at the management of the national estate, be it the Forestry Commission or the National Nature Reserves, there's little evidence of them managing this in an economically viable fashion. We're spending millions of pounds paying contractors to go into public land and invariably shoot deer at night and out of season. So where's the added value? Where's the local community benefit? There isn't one.
Lionel goes as a hunting tourist to wilderness areas across Europe, the USA and Africa. He explains why he loves Scotland.
There's nothing as beautiful and with the same type of landscape, in fact, because it's not only a question of hills, it's also a question of stalker, of tweed, of sense of humor, and also you can tell they do it for forever almost. So every time I come in Scotland, I learn 1,000 of things. So it's extremely interesting to come, and I think it's something pretty unique. You have deer everywhere in Europe, But you don't come in Scotland for a trophy. You come for the hunt, to be here, to spend days with the Scottish person, and to learn the Scottish way. And when you go in some other country in Europe, you pay for the trophy. Here, in fact, you come to spend the day, and if you are lucky, you will shoot. But if not, that's not the main purpose.
I tell Lionel that the Scottish Government wants to close down his kind of tourism.
First, I hope it's not true, and then that would be a shame, really, because conservation is a word we heard quite a lot for the moment. But if on one place it's true, it's in Scotland, because it's not only blood and animals. Here it's all the rest, and I don't think the tourist would bring the same amount of money. It's always a question of money, and I wouldn't spend the same if I was just walking in Edinburgh with my kids.
This whole item sounded like a party political broadcast by the anti-SNP party, but I want it to be a plea. Look at what's happening to rural Scotland before it's too late.
Right now the outlook is pretty bleak. If you are a Scottish business receiving one of Nicola's nasty bills, just remember you're not alone. You can appeal. Nicola has tried to get rid of Scottish deer so she can plant Scots pines all over the country. Her regeneration projects around Scotland have been judged very poor at Mar Lodge because she wants to do it without fences. You can see behind me there's a regen programme going on with a fence. That's how you plant trees. She's tried to ban air guns. She's made a criminal out of 500,000 air gun owners in Scotland because they have not applied for a licence. It's another failure. Let's make this sporting rate tax a failure for Nicola Sturgeon. Now, to show what breadth of sport there is in Scotland, it's a special Scottish hunting YouTube.
This is an unusual hunting YouTube showcasing the best hunting and shooting videos on YouTube from Scotland in just the last couple of weeks. The breadth of sport available in Scotland is truly amazing. Hunting and shooting is a tremendous asset to Scottish tourism. EagleReview.com has released a series of films about sport in Scotland, and this one, it's out on the grouse. This is driven grouse shooting with Muirburn Sporting, a collection of clips from the moor in Perthshire. And Field to Stream TV makes glorious grouse shooting filmed over 2 days in Aberdeenshire. Despite the Scottish Government's efforts to massacre the deer stalking remains a major Scottish attraction with 100,000 animals shot every year. It's not all rich lairds after glamorous stags. The shooting show features a red hind stalk and Argo extraction with South Ayrshire Stalking's Chris Dalton. Scotland's wildfowling and its goose shooting are big draws. Here's a short film clip from Aberdeenshire previewing the season by Skene Park Gundogs. Scotland is a pest control destination. This is rimfire night hunting rabbits by the Fieldsports Scotland channel, no relation. The Scottish Government has done its best to replace its natural wild salmon with diseased farmed fish, but Scottish salmon fishing clings on gamely and gets plenty of outings on YouTube. This one on the Middle Brawn beat of the River Connon. And finally, one of the staples of Scottish sporting life, Tweed. The Pace brothers make a film for Angus Glenn's and Grampian Moorland group showing how the wool comes from the hill and returns to the hill on the backs of stalkers. That's it for this week. I have put all these films into a playlist for you. Click on the I symbol top right or check this film's description if you have a YouTube film you would like us to pop into the weekly top 8. Email me the link, charlie@fieldsportschannel.tv.
That's it for this week. If you know a Scottish politician, please can you send them a link to this show so they can see what damage Nicola is doing to the rest of Scotland. Now you can find out more about the show on our website, fieldsportschannel.tv. You can click to like us on Facebook there, you can follow us on Twitter, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, you can even pop your email address into our constant contact page. We'll contact you about Fieldsports Britain. It's at 7 PM UK time every Wednesday, and this has been Fieldsports Britain from fabulous, beautiful Scotland. Good hunting, good shooting, good fishing, and goodbye.